Dana Hopkins with Alaska Adventures.
Adventure awaits. It's true. There is an adventure lying around every corner, but only if you're looking for it will you be successful in finding it. This summer, I learned to seek adventure in any way that I can. I spent 2 weeks on an Alaskan high trails trip through a company called Wilderness Adventures. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, here is my story. The adventure begins with a long 7 hours of sitting in the Anchorage airport. It was awkward, it was uncomfortable, and it was long. I was the first one to arrive at about 11 in the morning, and throughout the day, I met my trip leaders, fellow adventurers, and my future friends. First, there was Maggie. She was the first person that I met on this trip, and she made a great first impression. Tim was my other trip leader. While Maggie was a lot calmer and relaxed, Tim was excited. He was so excited to meet the first student on his trip. I loved his energy. The three of us bonded for about 2 hours before the next student showed up. Jack was the first. Over the trip's time, I would learn that he had got sunburned while skiing shirtless back in April. There were the Sams. Sam R was a girl who had a fear of bugs, and Sam W was a quiet guy who eventually, with a bit of prying, I would find out he was into mountain biking. There was the Canadian, Juliet. She was a vegetarian. Then Nora, the city girl, and Damon, whose name would change several times throughout our trip, first becoming John, later DeMarcus, and a few others along the way. We even had a student from Japan. His name was Ter. He didn't completely speak English, but he had a hunger to learn the language, and he could understand us really well. The last two students to arrive were Lee, who was the first friend I made on the trip, and he was a guy who loves to watch anime. And lastly, there was Claire, spelled with no I, as we all quickly learned. We would soon be thrown into the wilderness together, and eventually we'd all be friends, although it definitely did not seem like it on the first day. As I said, it was awkward, it was uncomfortable, and it was long. The adventure had officially begun, and I was ready for it. Of course, the idea of backpacking for 4 days in Alaska was a little scary. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to get along with everyone, if I could handle all the hiking, or in the end, if I'd even have fun. But I was also super excited to be doing something totally new, something I've never, ever, ever experienced before. That night, I made my first friend. It was nice to finally know that somebody there really did like me. Lee and I played Frisbee that night with slight reluctance on my end, but it was fun, and it was the first moment where I think I knew this was going to be a great trip. On the first day backpacking, I wrote in my journal, "The view here is always beautiful, unless there's a bug in your eye." We backpacked for about 4 miles on the first day, 8 miles on the second and third days, and 4 again on the fourth day. The second day was by far the hardest. It was a lot of miles, and many of them were down a very steep hill. On our third day, we were full of energy. Despite having gone through 8 miles of grueling hiking, we felt ready to do more. We could see Byers Lake, our final destination, and we wanted to hike the 4 miles to finish it. Everybody was full of excitement, and even though we were sore and tired, we were ready. The whole group was chanting, "Byers Lake, Byers Lake, Byers Lake!" Against our wishes, though, Tim and Maggie agreed that it would be best if we stopped for the night. On the fourth day, it wasn't the hiking that made it so terrible, it was the bugs. The bugs were everywhere. I had taken my jacket off because I'd gotten hot, and I quickly started to regret it because there were just so many bugs trying to bite me. I had to choose what I was willing to sacrifice because it was so hot. I had to let the bugs eat me. We made it out of the forest that day and headed to our next destination, Big Bear RV Park. More importantly though, the showers. We pitched our tents, grabbed some clean clothes, and eagerly headed for the showers. Later, among the RVs, we found that Big Bear had a playground. So Lee, John, Tare, Jack, and I headed towards the fun. A flat football, a few hula hoops, and some swings. 5 teenagers on an Alaskan adventure. We found ourselves having a blast. The next day held for us another shower and a 2-hour trip whitewater rafting down the Matanuska River. For this trip, I jumped on the opportunity to be a leader. Our group was split into 2 different rafts. In my raft, John and I took seats in the front of the raft to lead the group in paddling. I can gladly say that I did not fall in. As for a few other people, I can't quite say the same thing. Looking back on the photos from our rafting trip, there wasn't a single moment where I wasn't smiling. But the adventure was far from over, and I would have lots more smiles to come. The next day was a long drive north to Whittier. We toured the small city of about 200 people, who all live in the same building, got some ice cream, and prepared for our kayaking trip. We slept on the floor of the kayak warehouse that night, and were up bright and early the next morning to head for the water. The Lazy Otter water taxi shuttled us and our kayaks into the Prince William Sound. We unloaded onto the beach and watched the water taxi take off back towards Whittier. It was just us and the wild again. The first day was tough for me and my kayak partner. Our kayak had several issues that made it nearly impossible to steer. We decided to take a break later and paddle to one of the many beaches lining the shores of the Prince William Sound. We chowed down on some snacks and rested for a bit before we got ready to go again. Tim and Maggie had seen Nora, my kayak partner, and me struggle to paddle our kayak together, and so they decided to try something different. I got a new kayak partner, Sam W. The kayak did not get any easier to steer throughout the trip, but I did get used to having to put in all the extra effort. I took a nice nap on the beach after we finished kayaking that day. My naps on the beach became a regular thing after that. That night, I also started doing midnight walks. Since Alaska was running on 24 hours of daylight, I didn't have to worry about tripping over a stick in the dark. So I grabbed myself a can of bear spray and would head along the beach. It was nice to spend some time by myself, enjoying everything the Alaskan backcountry had to offer. On our third and final day kayaking, some gentle splashes between a few kayaks quickly turned into 6 kayaks rushing through the clear water trying to escape each other. Eventually, Sam and I were caught and got splashed, but lucky for me, I had been cold that day and was wearing my rain jacket. After we set up camp that night, Nora and Claire had the idea to sleep on the beach. Sounded like a great plan to me, so I decided to join them. We pulled a tarp out from under our tent and laid it on the beach. A few others asked what we were doing, and once we told them, we invited them to join us. Soon enough, everybody was convinced, and we were all laying out on tarps along the beach. Well, except for Sam W. Took a bit more convincing and a bit of a fight to get him out there, but he did join us. For a while, we all hung out on the beach, but at some point, the group dispersed and everyone went back to their tents. Well, almost everyone. Everybody except for me. I slept on the beach that night, and I must say that was some of the best sleep I've ever gotten. The next morning, we were picked up by the Lazy Otter water taxi and brought back to Whittier. We drove back to our first campsite and spent the next 2 nights there. Our time was coming to an end, but we enjoyed every last second of it. There were many things I learned while I was on this adventure. I learned how to be a better leader, how to have more confidence in myself, and how to become comfortable in completely new situations. But the thing I took away most from my trip with WA was that I can do it. Whether it's being immersed into something new, learning a new physical skill like kayaking, or pushing through the struggles of backpacking 8 miles a day and knowing that I am capable of doing it. Adventure is waiting for me, and I look for it every day in hopes of finding another big adventure soon. Mr. Toastmaster.